some of the closest people to me. My girlfriend, thank you. T-Roll, Gabrielle, got Corey over here. He's, you don't know now, but he's drinking him know. He's in a machine.
Oh yeah.
Okay. We got Peter. Everyone, thank you. So, a lot of the questions are the same questions, and Sue had asked, what was the inspiration? I started this book when I was 12. I was in 9th grade. It was 1984, and it was the same year I started wrestling. Funny enough. So the two things I've been doing more than 3/4 of my life are writing and wrestling, and I've given up a lot for both. And I'm sure if you ask Melanie, she knows that. Which the joke, but it's not really a joke, is the idea is that I'm real stable when it comes to wrestling. I'm just unstable in other areas. So, with the inspiration, I have a lot of poetry I've written. I've been writing since I'm probably like 9 or 10 years old, and I had a dream in one night, and it just about an idea of what love was. I guess what I knew at 12. I guess you'll know a whole lot at 12, 10, 11. And so the book took me, when I started writing the book, I was 12, and when I finished, I was 19. So the book kind of spanned, as I was writing it, spanned some of probably the most formative years of a person's life. You'll go through, more trials and tribulations as you grow, but I think in a formative year from 12 to 19 is a big deal. I started, I graduated from high school young. I was 16. I went to college when I was 16. So I was the first person in my family to go to college. I was making decisions as a grown-up, but I was a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. I make bad decisions just as recently as maybe yesterday too. Who knows? But at these ones, I was going through formative years. I was writing, and the inspiration came from some things I knew about relationships, some things, which wasn't much, some things that I learned from watching others, which was probably 99% of it, some things I read, movies you watch, and it kind of, what started off as, I have a couple one-page poems here. Most of my poems are half a page, a quarter page to 2 to 3 pages. And it started off kind of like that. And I never really determined I was going to be a writer. I would just write things. I never had to practice. I can write this stuff in my sleep, literally, because, most of it comes from my sleep. And other things I have to work really hard at, but the writing is something it's very easy, and the rhyme to meter part for me works really easy. I don't write too much abstract. It comes in rhyme to meter, and I don't have to practice it. I don't know how to break down a sentence. If you put a sentence in front of me and ask me where the conjunctive, adverb, gerund, noun, verb, I would fail immediately. And it comes from when I was in college. I wanted to have an English part of my major. And I had an English teacher who was unbelievable, if that's an adjective. I could use more, but she was. And so she flunked me, or tried to flunk me, because I had to go to a wrestling meet, and we were leaving with the university, so I had to drop the class so I wouldn't get an F. And I still have the book. I try to read it, but I just can't deal with it. I don't know if it was just a bad taste in my mouth or what. So I don't have any training with writing whatsoever, so I just write from the heart and from the soul. And the inspiration comes from things around me, whether I see people, personal experiences, whether I read something in the paper and it triggers something and kind of works around. Like I said, this one took about 7 years. When I put this book together, finally put it together, I had my whole floor in my apartment. I remember one time I was driving and I didn't have any paper, and so I had a Sharpie, and I had a shirt and a tie, and I wrote part of a verse on my shirt in traffic. I didn't have anything to write it down on, and so I had shirts and napkins and papers, and it looked like a junk pile, and I pieced the whole book together from a junk pile, actually. And I actually threw it away, and I should have kept it because it would have been interesting to see a collage of junk with my whole life's work on it. And it just kind of spawned from there. I just write when I'm happy, write when I'm sad. I don't have a time or a sit down and put things down. I don't derive my income from writing because that would be a job, and then I'd probably be terrible at it. Same thing with wrestling. I never really derived my income from it, so I loved it. So you actually go broke wrestling, and so I actually have to do that extra, So anything I have to derive income from, I always learned that's your job, and what you don't get income, that's a hobby. And when you start, for me, someone told me when I was real young, and I took this advice: find something you love to do and make a living at it. And that just screwed up everything I loved, because then now what I love to do and spend my free time on was now became my job. And then I hated doing that, because most people don't like their job and they want to wait till the weekend to go to the beach and surf and do everything else. So I actually had a couple of things I was fortunate enough to find and make it my job, and then it was terrible. So I found that taking things I love to do and then going broke doing them, I'm all for that plan. For some reason, I don't know. So and that's been kind of with the writing for me, has been something that I've been doing, and it's off and on. I don't have one catalyst, but I think one theme through everything is like love and close relationships, whether they're with a father and a son and a mother. There, I have a good one here. It's called "I Love You, Son, Goodbye." That was I wrote that when I was in high school. My dad and I. So a lot of it's very, very. If you read it, you'll probably relate to it with any close relationship. You know, the idea of just love in general. Everyone wants to find love of not of things, but of just an actual close relationship, whatever that may be. Like I said, family, significant other, and that's kind of the theme of everything. And then I love history, so there's a lot of things when you read. There's a historical based theme to things, and it's usually I'll research it and try to be accurate within it. So the easy part's the writing. The hard part for me is or not hard, but the more involved part's researching, so that when I write about what I love, it's accurate. Because I found that people like to pick apart things, regardless of what it is. So not on the merit of what's written or what's said, but of one thing that could be wrong. If you forget a period, forget it. The book's done. The speech is over. Nothing's right. So that was in keeping with that. You know, I've been writing another book as a script, actually, for about 11 years, and I'll probably, as long as I get it in under 25 years, I'll get that one done, probably the next decade. And then, you know, and then I still continue to write, you know, things on and off, but it goes in spurts. And a lot of people say, well, if you just wrote one page a day, it's like, there's no way. Sometimes I'll write one sentence in a whole year, and then I'll write a whole book in a couple. So it's different, and I found a lot of like soul searching within myself as I read old poems that I couldn't have had one inkling of knowing what my life was 20 years ago, and I read them now, and they are twice as impactful. But I knew more then somehow. I don't know how I knew more when I was 12 than I know now. But then I read it and I understand it better. I'm not sure how that works. So there's not really a starting and an ending point to Sue's question of what was the inspiration. I think that every day that goes by, you know, I live part of my life. I give up a lot. I try to give a lot. I make decisions. I make definitely make bad decisions, and I try to make better decisions. And through my writing, if I gave you the 300 or 400 poems I have, you would be able to strip through everything and find out who I was, and that's why I think that maybe I waited 20-some years. I'm not sure, and I'm going to wait 20 more to write the next ones. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of, as I go through and I have my next book selected, the poems I have, and as I read through them, it's scary to see how the writing came out, and I didn't know how it was going to be, because some of the poems were written 20, 25 years ago, some of them were written a year ago, and I could mix them up and throw them up and on the air, and then you could say, was this written yesterday? And I could say yes, and you'd flip it over and it said 1987. And I don't know how it comes about that way. Sometimes it becomes timeless, and it's scary that what you know when you don't know, and what you don't know when you really know, I think is what I found. And I'm going through the same thing now. I have a 16-month-old daughter, and I see how much she knows, and she doesn't know nothing, but she knows a lot. And it's crazy to see that. And so when I see it in my writing and I think about it, I think about at what point did I start having these feelings and understanding what I wanted in my life, and at the same time I'm deep into my life and have been lost in my path at the same time. I know that's very abstract, but I think that kind of just trying to paint a picture and just fill in the gaps. And if you understand or connect with any part of it, that's what the writing is for me. I don't have a single thing that I go on and say, okay, today I'm going to write about the surf and the sun and the beach. Sometimes just things just come to me and they come out, and it's not a release. Like, the writing's not a release to me. It's just something that happens. And I don't find comfort in it. Sometimes I find angst in it because I see what I'm writing and I see what I'm feeling. And sometimes I watch what I'm writing and it's based on what I observe from other people's. And so it feels sad or it feels happy. And it's everything in between. And I wish I had a formula for that. I have a system for everything else. Dishes, clothing, everything. But I don't have a formula for this, so... That's kind of it. In the nutshell, I've been thinking about for a long time, and I don't have an answer. I know that this book I've been writing for 11 years came from a dream as well. I know the two longest things in my life have come from a couple of dreams, and I'm training for the Olympics, and I've been training for a long time, and that's been a dream as well. So I think that over the course of my life, I think I'm just trying to live out some dreams and set goals and accomplish them. And one last thing, my dad passed away about 7 years ago. He had a book. It was called The Book of Marvels. It was written by a guy, his name's Richard Halliburton. It's a very rare book. It's hard to find. And I remember we had a fire when I was young. It was in the fire, but it didn't get burned. And we used to read from it. It was this guy that went all over the world earlier in the 1900s, 1930s, 40s, and watched all these. He was there when the San Francisco Bridge was being built. He was there in Machu Picchu. He was in, he was in Mount Fuji. He's one of the fastest descents of Mount Fuji. He actually fell down the whole mountain, slid down most of the way. And in the very beginning, he said when he was a young boy, he wanted to go to these different places, and he imagined he had this magic carpet. They could go all over the world. And he then, as a grown-up, went all over the world. And so in this book is real thick, and each chapter is just a place he'd been. And the idea was that you can do anything. So growing up, my dad always told me you could do anything you want. Just you can fly as high as you want, fly on your own wings. And he never clipped them, and he never forced me into anything else, into doing anything. And we used to read this book. I used to take baths, and he used to read the book to me when I was young. And then, I never knew what impact it had until later in life when I was training for, I think, my second Olympics. And then people would ask me, why would you keep doing this? And for some reason, I came back to this book when I was young. I never had a playpen when I was young. My brothers did. I have twin brothers. I had freedom, and I was probably more well-mannered when I was 7 than I am now, is what I hear. Anyways, I'm not sure, but I had a lot of liberties given to me when I was very young, and I had a very good and solid family and upbringing, even though my parents are divorced. But it comes back to my family and this book, which is called The Book of Marvels. And that's where it all started for me. And the other idea was that, my dad said you can do anything you want, and my mom, supported everything I did and said you can do anything you want. You can fly, go wherever you go. When my dad raised me, leave. I left the house when I was 16 and never came back, except for the summers to crash, of course. I'm not paying rent in the summers. So with that idea of just being raised to leave and fly, and the idea of, my dad was in a very hard business growing, like when I was growing up, he had I don't know how to call it, he was very violent, but he was very, very mild-mannered. You would never know. And I grew up the same way. And my brothers are in the same line of work, and they grew up very mild-mannered too, and you wouldn't know. And so I was always growing up with the idea of, I guess, a lover and a fighter, the extremes, violence beyond belief, and then love that is unknown. and so I grew up with that spectrum, and I can function within it, and it just comes out in either way. Sometimes I'm very, very cold when I shouldn't be, and sometimes I'm very forgiving when I shouldn't be, and everything in between. I feel everything's okay. I don't have a problem with any part of it because I've been exposed to it. And so all that takes place in the writing. It takes place in how I deal with people. It takes place, or has a presence in all different places. And you know, in my wrestling, you know, it becomes a passion, and the writing's a passion. You know, being around my friends and doing things from this passion, and just I'm willing to just keep going every second to do different things, and the writing's just one facet of it. That's the short version.